All right, y'all. I'm really excited for you to listen in to Josh and my conversation for this episode of Curious Connections here. Josh and I became friends through a group called Not Dead Yet Life, and it is so fun to see people that you meet online. We got to connect in real life just last year after knowing each other for a couple years. And it's crazy how, when you find people through shared values and shared mindsets, how instant the connection can feel. And that definitely has been true with Josh. Since I've known him, he's gone on several adventures, the biggest of which was just a master of consistency with writing, and ended up publishing a book called From Gotham with Love, and is super consistent on Substack. And so definitely check him out. He's got a great mind and love stories. We nerd out about comic books a little bit, narratives, and he just took a really cool bike adventure coming down from Chicago to St. Louis, all on gravel bikes, and talks about what that adventure was looking like and getting over some of the hardships that endurance sports can throw your way. So excited for y'all to dig in. Hopefully you enjoy, and we're up next.
I don't care what's public and what's not. And it's like if you and I start talking about something, I'm like, maybe that shouldn't be public. One, I trust you that you're not going to put it out there. Two, I don't really have anything to hide anymore.
Isn't that beautiful?
It's great.
Yeah, yeah. It's a weird permission slip when you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable enough with myself and what's out there that like, oh, and it comes back to what we've talked about in Not Dead Yet for like from the beginning with like being impeccable with your work, right? Like if you're confident in who you are and what you're saying, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes or there might be something where you're like, oh, that didn't age well, or I learned a lesson there, or whatever. But it's
Sure.
that's part of the learning too, where it's like, oh, like I got to own it. And that was one of the things that was funny with starting this because I jumped through all the hoops at work and I was like, hey, I want to start this thing. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to step on any toes. I need to keep my job. And that was like
I
the
would
big,
really like to have a paycheck every couple of weeks. It
yeah,
makes life so much easier.
right. And I don't think that this podcast is going to cover that anytime soon. And so they were like, yeah, like there's no conflict, but having a recorded presence online, like you've got your own brand and that comes with inherent risk.
It
So,
does.
ooh, okay, like that. But that was great advice.
It this came up in a conversation the other day. Like, I'm very much aware now that because I have been writing publicly for 3, almost 4 years at this point,
Yeah.
consistently, and because I have been putting myself out there within this not dead yet coaching ecosystem, there is a small amount of people that consume that and that I have a level of authority with. It's the Spider-Man thing of with great power comes great responsibility, right? And
Yep.
so like I very much recognize that I have this very large responsibility to stay authentic to me
Mm,
and to stay above reproach and to make sure that how I am acting when this isn't recording, how I am acting when I'm not in front of a camera, when I'm not writing things for other people, lines up with what I am putting out publicly.
yeah.
And like that idea of being impeccable with your word, like I take that a little bit further with all things and like just be authentic to you. As
Mm,
long as you are authentic to you in every way, it works.
yeah.
Because like one of the authentic pieces is I am allowed to change my mind.
Oh, right.
I for sure know that me and 20-year-old me would come to blows over some of the views that dude had. It's like, bro, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, I'm allowed to change my mind over time. That's the beauty of taking in new information and finding new perspective on things is, oh, yeah, that was a really bad idea.
Right. Yeah. Or I think where I've fallen into traps for sure is like that idea was maybe given to me, right? And
Oh,
I
for
didn't
sure.
challenge it myself, which is growing up, right? Like that's family dynamics 101. And I think that's also where there's been this forgiveness piece of like, oh, I'm not the same person that I was. And I could beat myself up about it for like the thoughts that I had, and more importantly, like the actions that you take. And you and I have talked about this in the past too, but it's like, I love that. Like, I don't have to be the same person I was, even when we started this conversation. Like,
Right.
it's so that was such a crazy paradigm shifting moment for me when I actually wrestled with that enough to allow it to kind of break some of the shackles that I had on myself of like previous, like, man, I was just an asshole to myself about stuff that happened a decade ago. Like, what
Oh yeah.
crazy?
Eh,
Like, what is
Like,
happening?
man, humans are, we're so weird. We are such a weird species in so many ways. And one of those things, like, we are the only species on the planet that will beat ourselves up for years
Yeah.
over a stupid mistake. You'll just own the fact that you made a mistake and let's move forward.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that if there was somebody else involved, they're not still sitting there going, I can't believe that he did that. Oh, he is the worst.
Yeah.
No, man.
Right. And even then, being comfortable, like, I know that I'm the villain in a couple people's story. And if they want to hold on to that's on them, right? Like it's like, and not to say that like, hey, you can just be an asshole and like whatever. It's like, ooh, if I've tried to make it right and or have changed, it, then it doesn't matter. Like I am the one that's in control of that, and also that permission slip of like, ooh, if I can forgive myself, then maybe eventually they'll forgive me. Maybe not, but that doesn't mean that I can't grow.
Also,
And
it doesn't matter
right, yeah,
if they do or not. Okay.
right,
Like, man, that's one of those things that we talk so much about. We're the hero of our own story. We are the protagonist. We are player one, like whatever metaphor you want to use there.
yeah,
And with that comes this, like, if you let that take over and let the ego take over with that, it becomes this thing that you are the primary character in everybody else's story too.
mm, mm,
And man, in some people's story, you're Kimmy Gibbler.
right,
You're the character that shows up on screen and the audience goes, "Ugh, this again?"
right,
In some people's story, you're the background guy who's walking across the street out the window, staring at his phone that you don't even notice
right,
because the main story is happening 100 yards away in the diner.
yeah,
I mean, we're the main character of our story. We're the villain in somebody else's story. We're a bit player in somebody else's story. And man, we haven't even showed up in 99% of the population story.
yeah. Man, that's another fascinating thing. I don't know if you follow Jesse Itzler. I think you would like some of his stuff. I came across him because he wrote a book with David Goggins, like before Goggins was Goggins, and he invited David Goggins to come live with him for a month and like train him. And so it's called like Living with a Seal or something like that.
Okay.
Hilarious. This is like super white guy, kind of self-made millionaire, ended up marrying Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx. And so they're like
Okay.
billionaires at this point. Like,
Yeah, they're fine.
cars to
They're going to be okay.
yeah, yeah. And he started like a private jet, like service type of deal. And so he just had some like cool storyline. But he posted something recently. He's getting older. And he was like, man, the closest friends that I have now, I didn't know 10 years ago. And so it was like this evolution of like change. And it was kind of on the theme of what we were talking about of like, I love the fact that there's still strong supporting characters in my life that I don't know yet. And I love that. You know,
Mhm.
that is like, I would have been like paralyzed with that at some point in my past where I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so anchored to like the thought of unraveling or not necessarily introducing something new, but like the loss of what existed at that time, like the thought of that in pursuit of something new that is more appropriate for where I'm at and what that looks like is now thrilling to me. Not that I'm, actively trying to shed a bunch of stuff like I've done
Right.
that along the way, but the openness and the curiosity that I have of like, ooh, what's around the corner? And I think you and I are a great example of that. Like we would have never have crossed paths like, 10, 15 years ago. Like there would have just been no way. And what a gift to have this thing. It's like, oh shit, like this is awesome.
Yeah. I read this really interesting stat the other day. The average friendship lasts for 2 to 3 years.
Really? That's interesting.
And like we put so like I very much see that there's two sides to take this. There's two sides to take everything. If the average friendship lasts for 2 to 3 years, man, we put so much pressure on a friendship lasting until we're sitting on the porch in rocking chairs and we have gray hair, if we still have hair at all, yelling at the kids walking in our yard.
Yeah.
And instead, enjoy what it is when it is. Like, make the most of the friendship right now. And if it lasts longer than 2 to 3 years, that is a gift.
Yeah.
Like, I look at, the people that I'm closest to now. And for a long time, I've had this like arbitrary number in my head. Like, I only have one friend from pre-COVID.
Okay.
And it kind of started as this joke. It's like COVID was this big reset for the entire country.
Sure.
And it's true. Like, I have one friend that I was like really good friends with. It's an ex-girlfriend, my like the big high school girlfriend, right?
Nice.
The very first love of my life, all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her and my wife now get along great. Like, there's nothing weird there, just so we're clear.
Hilarious. I love that. Yeah.
Like, she's the only person that I'm still like really friends with from this former part of my life. And she's been there through all of these different iterations and she's seen all of these different versions of myself. And yeah, she's loved every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I look at people that I'm friends with today, and there have been friends over the last 5 years that have come and gone. And they've kind of fallen into that 2 to 3 year window. And I can either be really mad that, man, forget those guys.
Yeah.
Like, or I'm like, yo, that was a really cool 2 to 3 years, and I learned a lot. I'm very grateful for the relationship. And when we cross paths again, if we cross paths again, I'm gonna hug the crap out of them,
Yeah.
and we're gonna pick things up right where we were.
Yeah. I think that's another, as you were talking, I was trying to think about that because I've got a few friends that have kind of fallen into that. How would I want to phrase that? Kind of like seasons of influence or like connectivity or whatever, right? And I love how you kind of ended that where it's I've gone, like checking in and on social media kind of half-assed, like, oh, like we might have exchanged, maybe a phone call, not even a year. Like we would go years without like actually speaking to each other. And then but to be able to like, if I was in their city, like you came to visit me or whatever, it is like we're back in it. We're able to connect and even on new stuff.
Mhm.
But it's
Let's
interesting.
use you and I as the example there, right?
Yeah,
Like, maybe every 4 or 5 months, you and I would hop on a phone call. We exchanged the random text here and there. But last summer,
yeah,
I think it was, when I came through Virginia, man, we had a 3 hour conversation. It was just, yeah, we just dove right in.
right.
And, because we have those sporadic things, we cut through these small talk of, oh man, look at the weather. Like, how is this like warm? Is this cold? Like, how beautiful is this? Like, we cut through all of that right away and we get into, you also tell me about your childhood.
Yeah,
Like, tell me about the agreements that you're breaking that your parents just like kind of forced on you. Like, we just dive right into the meat of things, and it's great.
yeah,
And there's no weirdness around, oh man, now we have to like once a week, we have to like stay in touch. It's, we're both adults.
right.
And I don't know if you've been following along. I haven't been home this year.
Yeah, wild amount of travel, dude.
It's
So
like
crazy.
it was like just having that awareness that, yeah, we're both adults, we both have busy lives, and there's no animosity or resentment towards either one of us, that, yeah, we have to stay in touch. And
Right.
when we do, it's like this.
Yeah.
It's great, and I love it, and I'm excited, and I'm here for it. I'm also not going to try and force it.
Yeah. I love that. I'm curious if you can pinpoint like a time or a season or maybe a year, or maybe it was COVID, where you had a few of those connections, or maybe more than what you were doing before, where you were able to kind of cut through what you just described, where it's like, I don't have to like prime this conversation and talk about the weather. I can just kind of go with either like something deeper that you've been pondering, or a
Yeah.
question maybe you got asked. Because I've had like good friends, and in moments of need, I've been able to like be vulnerable and things like that. But there's been this resurgence, like this huge surge where it doesn't happen with everybody, but I've got more people in my life where I'm able to approach them just like you and I did within those 3 hours, where it's like, oh shit, like there's really nothing that's off the table. Like you can just kind of hit it. But does that question make sense? Like I'm
Yeah,
curious,
yeah.
you can pin
Uh,
when that shift happened, or maybe it didn't.
it, it's happened only probably in the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Like, I look back at some of the friendships and relationships that I had, you know, let's use, since we're using COVID as the break point, we'll keep
Yeah.
using it. Like, some of the friendships and relationships I had before then, we stayed fairly surface, right? Like, it was sports, it was movies, it was the things that I was into at the time.
Yeah.
Not saying that's good, not saying that's bad. It's the reality of it. It was what I was into at the time. And over the last probably 3 or 4 years, as I have done more work on me and become more comfortable with me,
Mm.
really fallen back in love with who I am and what I'm into, the conversations have changed,
Yeah.
because now I am willing to go beyond. Man, did you see the Blues lost to Winnipeg the other night? That's a bummer. I
Yeah.
mean, and surrounding myself with people that are on a similar trajectory. That's the other big thing. Is it's one thing if I'm comfortable having those conversations, but if I'm around people who only want to talk about last night's playoff game because talking about what they're feeling is scary or foreign, or they don't have the vocabulary to do it, doesn't really do any good. And so the last couple of years, as you and I both have surrounded ourselves with people who are open to going a little bit deeper, who are open to having those conversations. It changes the conversation from jump.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we don't talk about movies.
Right.
Like, we will still deep dive into a movie or a TV show that we're watching and just dissect it. I mean, I spent 2 hours talking about The Dark Knight Rises a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not all of the conversations that I'm having now.
Yeah. It's interesting because you talk about sports, and I still think sport is one of those crazy things that brings people together and bridges divides in a
Mhm.
way that's insane. I mean, also creates some animosity,
Sure.
but like the shared experience piece is still something that I love about sport. Like I would go to
No
any
doubt.
live experience. Like it doesn't matter. It could be badminton. I'd be like, oh, it's live. Cool. Like I'm in. But it's funny because I don't know that I would want to talk about it after either anymore. And it's funny, my
What
first,
it does,
yeah,
like,
go ahead.
what it does is it provides the common ground.
Yeah.
I remember years and years ago, mutual friend of ours, Matt, made like, he had this thing that one of the things that he loved about the barbell is it's an equalizer. It is a common ground that it doesn't matter what else is going on in your life, what else you believe in, else you're into. We have this in common and we can build from here.
Mm,
And man, sports are the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, what you believe in, any of those things. You're wearing an Oakland Raiders hat. I'm wearing an Oakland Raiders hat. sorry, Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep, showing our age. It's fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have this in common. If nothing else, we can have this conversation. And through this conversation, we can develop a relationship and we can find out if there's anything more. Also, there doesn't have to be anything more than we're both side by side, raising our glass, cheering on our team because we are just overwhelmed with this emotion. Same thing happens at concerts, same thing happens at movie premieres, same thing happens all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that like barbell aspect. And I think that definitely cross cuts and the shared experience piece of that. So I wanted to hop in and get like I read about this adventure and
Yeah,
fun because I got to be part of like I remember when that was thrown out as like an idea. And that
yeah.
was like maybe a year ago. Like was this like about a year in the making or
Not quite. So the event that you're referring to is me and seven other people
okay,
took the train from St. Louis to Chicago and rode bicycles back across the state of Illinois to St. Louis. This was really born out of me and two of my friends wanting to do something a little crazy.
yeah,
And it started on with the Katy Trail here in Missouri. So the Katy Trail, you can take the Katy Trail and it connects to another trail called the Rock Island Trail, and you can connect Kansas City to St. Louis straight across the state of Missouri. And you
so
never have to be on roads, you never have to be with traffic, like you are on trails the entire way. And the train goes from Kansas City to St. Louis, and so that's kind of where it started is, let's do this thing. I was not a cyclist at that point. I didn't even own a bike at that point. I was training for a powerlifting meet when the first one happened,
great.
and I borrowed a friend's wife's bike. And so on that trip, that was when we started to plan out what's the next one.
So
Like any good adventurer, you're already looking ahead towards the next adventure when you're in the first one.
right.
And so we started talking like, where else can we take the train to? And it was Chicago.
Yeah.
And
So
it's like
for those of us,
distance wise, it was only
yeah,
like 40 or 50 miles further.
okay,
So not that much further
I
to
got
go
you.
from Chicago to St. Louis.
Which is still like close to 300, right? It's like two something.
Kansas City to St. Louis ended up being like 322
Okay,
all told. Chicago to St. Louis was going to end up being closer to like 370.
okay, all right,
And that accounts for like little junk mileage in the cities.
gotcha. Okay,
It's like on that Kansas City to St. Louis ride, like, we talked a lot about it and, we shared some stuff on Instagram while we were doing it. I wrote a long thing about it after it was done. And it was one of those adventures and experiences that changed. You changed me. And it's a cool thing about experiences. They change you if you let them change you. And that was one of those things that really shifted a lot in me.
yeah,
What I'm capable of, what I enjoy. And it kind of cemented these two other guys as like, oh, these relationships are a little different. And so, surprise, surprise, other people that were listening were interested
yeah,
because, we have surrounded ourselves with a bunch of lunatics.
right,
It's just, I'm not upset about it. It's just reality that I've surrounded myself with a bunch of other people that are maybe slightly into suffering a little bit more than the average human.
yeah,
And so when we started talking about Chicago to St. Louis, we had a bunch of people that were interested. And so one of my friends, one of the guys that was on the Kansas City trip, one of his just like savant gifts is being able to plan these things out.
cool,
Like he plans out the route, he plans out where we're staying, he plans out everything about it. So he started putting it together and keeping it close enough that we maintain some of the momentum from the Kansas City ride.
yeah,
Because we knew that if we put it a year out, people would lose interest.
gotcha. Okay,
And so we did it 6 months. It's like,
okay,
okay, Kansas City to St. Louis was in the fall. We're doing Chicago to St. Louis in the spring. That sounds great until you realize you were riding south in the spring when the wind is coming from the south. It was great. It really was. It was the single hardest physical thing I've ever done in my life.
Yep.
Day two was a tale of two cities. Very much so. Like day two was the first 40 miles of day two was the best. I
Cool.
mean, when I think of perfect, it was that. Like it is this single track trail. It's just green, it's tree covered, like you're riding through this tree tunnel. It feels like you're not supposed to be there, like it's this big secret, like this hidden passageway through time and space.
Yeah.
You've got a river on one side and a canal on the other, and you are the only like land about 10 yards wide running between these two bodies of water.
Oh,
Like it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, the sun was out, like the trees were blocking the wind. Like this was perfect. And then we turned south. And for 80 miles, we're riding into a 20 to 30 mile an hour headwind. I went from averaging like 16 miles an hour to 9.
holy smokes.
And my brother asked me afterwards, he goes, "What's harder, running into a headwind or riding into a headwind?" I go, "Riding." Because you're not just trying to keep forward motion, you're trying to not fall over. You have to stay moving fast enough that you don't fall over.
So crazy.
Yo, it's wild. There was a really interesting moment coming into lunch that day. We just done like 2.5 hours into this headwind. And by this point, like we're all kind of split up. There's different groups. I'm by myself at this point, kind of in between the lead group and somebody else who was another probably 20, 30 minutes behind me.
Okay.
And so I'm just by myself in the middle of the Illinois farmland. There's no tree coverage. I'm just riding into this headwind. And I look down in my map. I've got like 20 minutes left till this restaurant that everybody else, that the first three are at, waiting with food. And spending that last like 20 minutes just like cycling through thank you legs, thank you feet, thank you bike, thank you body. Like, man, I was like, I know that there's a former version of me that just would have been calling myself all of the worst names, like get faster, get pick it up, you're moving too slow. I'm like, no, man. Like, look at what I just went through. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for being able to manage and stay up and stay consistent and not die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I came in and bro, I was exhausted. I was also just like full of smiles because I'd spent the last 20 minutes just bombarding myself with gratitude and thank yous.
Amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Because at that point, you had, because the first day wasn't as long, but you still put in like 40 or 60, right?
The first day was like 53.
Okay.
The first day was a lot, like over half of that first day was just getting out of Chicago. And so like we're riding through some streets, we're kind of dealing with some traffic, we're riding through the south side of Chicago before we get to the suburbs. And then we finally hit the trail, and then about 10, 15 miles out from Joliet, we got hit with rain.
I forgot about the rain
Yeah.
first
So we
day.
got wet. Which, man, like that was one of those things, right? Like I went into this bike trip for the couple weeks leading up to it, like I was just I'm gonna get wet. It's gonna be windy. Like I'm just telling myself it's gonna be the worst case scenario. And so as long as it's not that, I am stoked.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it got sloppy. It got sloppy that first day. Thankfully, we had washer and dryer at the Airbnb, so we were able to clean everything each night. You know, we were able to get everything dried. We were able to put the bikes in the garage and wipe them down and get them cleaned up before we set off for day two.
Very cool. Yep.
Yeah. Day 3 was an interesting one. Day 3 was about 80. Day 2 was like 117 miles. Ended up coming in under the cover of darkness. I hit the Airbnb, took a shower, laid down in the bed, and just cried for a little bit because it was the single hardest thing I'd ever done. I was spent,
Yeah.
nothing left. Day 3 was an interesting one. Day 3 was about 80, give or take,
Okay.
from Bloomington to Springfield, Illinois. And weather cooperated a lot more.
Yep.
It was a lot better on day 3. It wasn't nearly as windy, and we weren't doing as much headwind, which
Okay.
helped. There was also this really wild stretch. I would say it's like the 50 to 75% stretch.
Okay.
There was a pack of 5 of us that stuck together, and we were on this backcountry road. There were no cars. We hit a downhill with a tailwind at one point and hit like 25, 26 miles an hour as a group. And then for the next hour, we stayed about 21 miles an hour,
Okay.
just working seamlessly. Like it's one of those moments where like thought kind of went away and
Mhm.
we were just working as a team without really thinking, just feeling it.
Yeah.
And then I hit a wall 2 miles from the rest stop. Like I just hit this point, like I can't push anymore. And 4 of them went on without me. I caught up about 10 minutes later. I'm like, I'm spent. I've got 15 miles left to the Airbnb. I woke up Sunday morning for day 4, and like that last 15 miles on day 3, with every pedal, my right knee felt like it was going to explode.
Oof.
And like to help alleviate some of that, I'm pulling more with my left leg.
Yeah.
And so for 15 miles, my left hamstring was in a constant state of trying to cramp. So I wake up Sunday morning for day 4, and I'm getting all my stuff ready, and like I'm sitting there and like, it's in my head. I'm like, I won't, nope, I can do it. I'm gonna finish it. I'll get it done. I'll get it done. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. We're doing it, just kind of like having that internal battle.
Yeah.
Uh, One of my buddies walks in, sits down in the kitchen. We're both drinking coffee, not really saying anything and just looking at each other. And I can tell like we're both kind of thinking the same thing.
Uh,
And third one walks in, sits down. I don't think I have it, boys. Like that was the permission I needed.
mm,
And so the 3 of us booked tickets on the train, took the train the rest of the way home. And man, the kick in the pants, I got a flat tire a mile from my car. I end up having to pull into this Napa auto station, like Napa Auto Parts, about a mile and a half from the car, and called one of the other 2 that was with him, like, I got a flat tire. Can you come pick me up? It's like not only am I already limping in to the finish line, I then have to be carried across.
oh, man. I want
Yeah.
back to something because that's an incredible story, but I think you experienced something that few people get to, and you used your own language, which I thought was really cool, but a shared flow state.
Oh yeah.
Like, what a cool, like, out of all the things that you said, and congratulations, because you're a badass. That's the whole thing is awesome. But as you were talking, that like group dynamic that allowed for that like loss of time, space. I'm just actively doing it with other people too, right? So it's like you are a contributor, which I've got goosebumps just talking about. It's like as a contributor going into that flow state, I'm just curious if you've ever felt that before. What was that like? Like you lit up a little bit as you were talking about it because
Yeah.
you were capable of more, it sounds like, than you would have been alone. Like that's the other cool
Oh,
thing.
no doubt. Like there
Yeah.
were two days on this trip that I pushed myself to something that I didn't think was possible. And I've had that a couple times. I had that when we did the Kansas City to St. Louis one.
Okay.
The three of us got into this just unspoken cycle. For those that don't ride bikes or know what I'm talking about, like how it works is you have the lead person. The lead person is the puller. Like they are setting the pace, they are out front, and then you're staggered. And you want to be about 12 to 18 inches off of the tire in front of you. And you're getting into this slipstream. And the idea is like you're exerting 110% power when you're in front. And then as you hit your I'm done, 3 to 5 minutes, you just slow down the pedal a little bit, drop back to the very last spot, and everybody just works their way up to the next. And when you drop down to that very last spot, you've got such a vacuum being created by the people in front of you that you are exerting about 70% power to maintain that speed. And so it's a rest. And so after 20, 30 minutes, it's your turn to pull again. You've recovered a little bit. And when you get into a cycle like that with people that know what they're doing, that again, thought goes away. Like
Yeah.
the brain is able to do whatever it wants because it doesn't have to think about it. It just feels it. And it's a wild feeling just to be in that spot. And there's a lot of trust that goes into this
Yeah.
because you've got 5 people. I am the smallest. I
Right.
am the smallest at 185 pounds. I'm the smallest one doing this. There's a lot of body.
Yeah.
There's a lot of man mass just going 20 miles an hour on bikes
Yeah.
with no protection other than a helmet. And
Right.
so, like, there's very much this trust that, especially when you're in the middle, like, man, the 2 people in front of you, you're trusting that they're in control.
Right.
You're trusting that the person behind you is in control and isn't hitting your back wheel.
Right.
And you feel them and you can just like feel the presence there. You can feel the person in front of you. Man, it's such a different thing.
Yeah.
And it's not something that, I've also felt it in like group hikes. I felt it in planning, like group planning sessions. I felt it at retreats when everybody gets into sync. Like, it doesn't always have to be this physical thing,
Yeah.
but getting into that group flow state, though, that's when time dilates. Because like I look back at how long that was and how far we really rode, and it didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
Time just kind of moved at this, for all of my sci-fi nerds, it was like warp speed. It was like exactly how I imagine warp speed works.
So
Just
cool.
everything is moving around you, and you are just,
Yeah. Just so dialed in.
yeah.
I love that you were able to talk about that. I'm definitely chasing like more flow states just personally, like even like work and things like that. But I still think I've had some of those shared experiences, but it's interesting because there's so much that you're giving up when it's in a group setting. Like there
Yeah.
is like shared. I love the way that you described it from the biking perspective, but even on the planning side of things too, right? Like it requires like a vital engagement to be able to get to that like state. And I think that I think it's really special when it happens with other people. So with this experience, having those types of things, or just where you're at in life, like you were talking about powerlifting, there's a lot of like flow states that are like personal as you build
Oh
up to
yeah.
that, right? Like, and so do you see yourself pursuing more group experiences like that where, and not that you're just out chasing flow, or
Uh,
like the individual, and what's cool about this too, right, is like you had to get to a certain point as an individual to even be part of that group,
right.
like to have that shared experience. So I'm not saying that it's absent of individual pursuit, but do you find yourself like leaning or chasing group or personal?
I don't know that I'm chasing either one as much as I'm chasing. I don't even necessarily like the word chasing because chasing feels like I'm never going to catch it. I see this more as I am building a life that allows for those opportunities to happen more frequently.
Mm,
And when they do happen, being as grateful as possible and making the most of the moment,
Yeah.
and not getting upset when they don't. You know, I know what like the little things are that I need to be doing on a fairly regular basis to set myself up for success in that regards. And so that's what the focus is. The focus is on being that kind of person who has those opportunities come up, who gets put in those positions. Because when I set it up to be like that, it's not ever a thing that I get to and then I'm done.
Yeah.
I look at this because like, okay, I'm going to tell this a little bit different way. Going into like 2023, I think it was when I decided to start writing and putting stuff out publicly. Like I made two goals at the same point of that at the same time going into that year. One of them was compete in a powerlifting meet, and one of them was do this writing thing. And the difference between those two, one of those was a destination goal, and one of those was a becoming goal.
Ooh.
And the cool thing about the becoming goal is there's no endpoint to it.
Right.
It was like I hit that powerlifting meet, I walked away from it, and then I just kind of floundered for a month or so afterwards, and finally ended up setting it the goal of doing another powerlifting meet because that was the last time I felt any purpose.
Mm.
Is when I had that to train for. Whereas the writing thing, I've never stopped.
Yeah.
Because the goal wasn't to write a book. The goal wasn't to start a Substack. The goal wasn't to do any specific thing. The goal was to become. And so going back to the flow state question, like I'm not necessarily setting the goal of I want more flow state.
Right.
The goal is I want to be somebody who has these opportunities.
Oof. How much of that, how much of the benefit of the becoming mindset do you think led to, I think, your wonderful perspective on pursuing this ambitious bike rides and tapping out? Like,
Yeah.
because I thought you teed that up very beautifully. Like and for me, it's like races, right? It's like, okay, and I felt what you just said on like so many people sign up in a short order after a race or a meet or whatever because it is like this weird thing. It's like, oh, I did it or I didn't, and that could be a pursuit to like go to the next thing. And I slipped into like a little bit of a depressive state after Moab because I it was an 18-month pursuit, and then it
Sure.
was like, oh shit. And
All of a
so
sudden the purpose went away.
right. And so do you think that your writing habits have trickled into some of your ability to navigate what job from an outsider's perspective, like super productively? I loved reading what you wrote about like what other people might deem failure, like you didn't complete your bike ride, and then hearing you tell the story right now, I'm like, oh man, you got like so many, what a cool experience, and you look on it fondly, not like, oh, I had to tap out. And so I'm
Yeah,
curious, there's things like that, and I'm just using writing because you just brought it up, but that led
sure.
you to that mindset because I think it's rare. Like I think a lot of people, and especially men, would beat the shit out of themselves
Oh
of like,
yeah.
you didn't do it. You didn't do what you set out to do. So are you going to do it next weekend, or are you trying this
I
again in
mean,
a
we
month?
are going to take the train back to Springfield and finish it.
I love that. That's great.
Like that's going to happen at some point. We're also going to wait and do it when there's not a southern wind.
Awesome.
We learned that lesson hard. No, what it is, and to steal a phrase, is I've learned how to play the infinite game.
uh,
And the internal conversation around, pulling the ripcord on the bike ride was, can I finish it today? Yes. The long-term damage isn't worth the cost. I want to be able to ride my bike again in a week.
right.
I want to be able to do another one of these. I don't want to kill myself to finish this thing out of pride
Yep.
or out of some misplaced expectation, or because what are these other 7 people going to think if I bail?
Yep.
What is my wife going to think if I bail? What are the people that read what I write going to think if I quit? It was funny. She sent me this text on the train, and so she didn't see my response. And if she listens to this, will be the first time that she hears how I actually responded when I got this text. We were on the train from Springfield to St. Louis, and my wife sends me a text and she goes, I'm more proud of you for having the awareness to pull the ripcord and quit than to force yourself to finish. And man, I just started crying because that's it.
Yeah. That's a good
You
lady
know,
right there. Mm,
and yeah, like having that and looking at it through that lens, man, I'm proud of myself for having that awareness.
yeah.
Because again, I know that there's a former version of me that would have, I'd be on in a wheelchair or on crutches for weeks afterwards because I did something terribly wrong to my body just to prove something to somebody who doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And
that was the
for a
question.
thing that was
Who am I
made
trying
up.
to prove it to?
Yeah.
Right.
Like
You're
you
like,
made it up.
man, this is yeah, that was one of those conversations that we had a ton on that bike ride. I was like, look at the sheer abundance that we have in life that we can take time off of work to do something as stupid as riding a bike across an empty state.
Yeah.
Man, you and I had a similar conversation going into Moab. It's like,
Yeah.
look at the abundance you have that you can take time off of work to go run through the mountains for 4 days.
Right.
Like, this is a ridiculous thing. People don't just do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we consider vacation. Like, I was having this conversation with my barber the other day, and like him and his lady are planning this vacation down to the Virgin Islands, and he's talking about how it's like it's a 3 minute walk to the beach from where we're staying. That's all I'm doing. I'm walking, I'm rooting, and I'm walking back. And she's got all these plans around hikes and all these other things. And I started to say something, and he looked at me and goes, Bro, I'm not taking advice from somebody who used their vacation to ride a bike across the state of Illinois. We have different definitions. I'm like, yeah, you right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I will go back to just not talking. That's great.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Please don't shave a lightning bolt into my head. That'd be great.
Oh no, please do. Why not? There's no rules to this anymore. I'll wear a hat for a week.
Yeah.
So that'd be a great story of why do you have a lightning bolt in your head? Oh, because I mouthed off to my barber and he thought
Yeah.
it'd be funny.
I upset the wrong person. I think that I love, I love being unique and different. And I think that for me, novelty is like a core value. Like I seek things that are not in the norm. But even with what your barber was teeing up, I kind of love like the fact that he knows what he wants.
Yeah.
And whether it's actually what he wants or not, like I always question a little bit when someone's like, oh, I'm just going to sit on the beach. I'm like, are you escaping or like, what is this? And I think when you talked about like the abundance, and one of the big turning points for me was when I made this shift for things to like better myself. And that's the lens at which I approach most things in life now. And so it includes vacations, and it
Sure.
includes like these things. And so we just went to Puerto Rico, just Claire and I, which was cool. And we like split it up to where it was like we had intention, like what you and I have
Mhm.
talked about a lot, right? And it was this cool thing to be able to navigate that with someone else and still get what we wanted, and then to laugh as we watched other people struggle because they might not have had the intention. Or the big thing that I think is one of the themes of what we just talked about is, does the experience match the expectation that you put on it? And does that ruin the moment experience? And so even going back to your bike ride, right? It's like, oh, you expected to finish. Like you'd put in the work, you'd done these things. And so it'd be easy when things don't go the way that you thought, or your body doesn't perform. Also obsessed with the gratitude piece. I want to come back to that because I think that's something that is just missed on a lot of people. But
Yeah.
to have the clarity to be able to say, oh, like the experience was the expectation. And goddamn, if you didn't have one hell of an experience.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So kind of before I ask the question, this is one of the things that my wife and I, we are really good for each other on. Given her default mode, like if we go to the Dominican Republic, like we did last summer, her default is, no, I'm just gonna hang out on the beach all day. Mine is, I'm not hanging out on the beach. I am going. I am doing. And there's a harmony between those two that we need to find. Like, and so she's really good at pulling me into taking some time to slow down because I need that. And I'm really good about helping her to go and do because she needs that. And so it's like where we work really well together. But my question for you is, you said that, novelty and unique is one of the core values. Do you ever find yourself sacrificing authenticity for the sake of being novel and unique?
Ooh. So it's funny because when I did some values work, authenticity and novelty are both like core values. And I think it's being able to match what is novel to what I deem like authentic. So
Okay.
you and I have a similar, I don't know if we want to call it obsession, but maybe with like shoes. I've got no problem. Like I've got custom Vans with that are like hot pink wraparound and
I won't talk about how
checkerboard.
many shoes I have. This is
We
why
don't
do you
have,
have to attack me like that?
we don't have to say numbers. I'm saying that like I like you. And it's like this thing where it's like, oh, I like that I have a custom pair that maybe someone else dreamed up the same that I did, but they're loud, they're whatever. And the amount of people that come up and talk to me about that, like I love, and I'm able to authentically share, like, yeah, this is dope, this is cool. And so I think by having both, it's like a calibration to
Sure.
where like, ooh, I can kind of dial it in and what does it look like to seek things that like I've got a pretty good gauge of like what novel is and what still allows me to approach those things with authenticity. And it's been interesting trying to bring other people into that in a couple different ways. So with a newish relationship with Claire, like we're like two plus years in, this was like our first trip where we had to really navigate that. Like there, we weren't going to visit someone. Like a lot of like we traveled together, but it's always been in like to visit family or like a really small like staycation type deal, right? Like a weekend. And so it was cool to bring her in to like navigate some of those. Like I think you and I travel enough that we probably have a stronger appetite to pursue beyond like the immediate tourist trap or
Yeah,
whatever, right?
I don't want to go to Cabo and stay at the resort.
Right. Yeah. Don't
I
want
want
to
to
be
go to Cabo and get lost in Cabo.
right. Yes. Yeah. And so what does it look like to have that conversation? And so Claire really likes structure. And so we were able to like have some anchor activities. And then just like you were pushing and pulling, like what you were talking about, it's like, ooh, we found that in, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research and double click on some things. So she feels like, oh, there's some anchor points. And I have a general idea of what Trevin's going to put us into, like here. And then
Our compromise is as long as she knows where we are sleeping each night,
that was one of
we're
the
good.
things because
Because
I
if I
love,
get on that plane and we don't have a place to stay every night that we're in that place, I'm not getting on the plane.
yeah,
I'm like, that's a fair argument, dear. I will, sure. Uber exists in 90% of the world, so I don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
But having a bed,
yeah, yeah.
also
It's not
give
outrageous.
me a hammock. I'll figure it out.
Well, that's where I laugh because you and I are probably the same. Where, and speaking of apps, like is coming back to where we started. One of my friends told me about Hotels Tonight, which is an app where you can literally just be like, okay,
Yeah.
what's available now? And I think it broke Claire's brain. She was like, I can't fathom intentionally going on a trip and not knowing where you're going to sleep. And I was just like, that fires me up. I'm like, I
We're
love
gonna find out.
in the ambiguity. I love all of that sort of stuff. but it's paralyzing for other people. And when it starts to, when that anxiety or whatever starts to ruin the fun, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, let's do something different. We can, like, the compromise. And again, I like where they're coming from, where it's like, I don't need a 12-hour itinerary from like wake up to stop. It's like, I would just like the knowledge that no matter how the days goes, I know
I can
where.
take a shower and go to bed.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And so that was a good question. Novelty and authenticity.
Well,
And what
I
do you,
ask because we both are surrounded by people that very high performers, very smart, very intuitive, very, if we want to use the word wise, right?
yeah,
That a lot of my perspective and view comes from some of the mentors that I've had along the way.
yeah,
And so, like, if I'm, I guess, like, where I come at is authenticity versus originality, right?
okay.
It would be foolish of me to discard an idea that somebody else had because I value originality over authenticity.
Mm,
Whereas if we want to use total accountability as an example, this radical accountability idea that Matt talks about a lot with Not Dead Yet, that resonates with me a lot. And that is a very much a core foundation of who I am and how I operate in my life. But if I value originality so much that authenticity is second, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to discard it and try to come up with something else. Instead, be authentic, say it in my voice, give homage to where I got it from, and let's move forward. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I was coming at because, like, man, I also know people that value originality over authenticity, and it shows.
yeah,
And they don't last very long because people see through the facade pretty quick.
yeah. And on the opposite side of that spectrum, right? It's, you can tell the people that are adopting things without any internal barometer, where it's just like, oh, Matt talks about total accountability and he talks about the four agreements. Like, that's immediately who I am. And I think that there's appropriate space, and especially if you're in a community like what Matt's built, where it's like, hey, try it on, right? Like, give it a
Yeah.
shot. And if it resonates, cool. Like let's go. I think you just hit on something that has been one of the coolest parts of going through this as an adult, I guess, if that's what I want to call myself. But,
I
starting this
mean,
process
on
in,
paper, we are considered adults.
but
It's a gross word.
yeah, yeah, it's the worst. And fuck, man, I've got a kid that's turning 20 this year. Like, and I still don't feel like
No,
I'm an adult.
no.
But the kind of COVID and divorce, like all this sort of stuff, this permission slip of like rebuilding, like, okay, everything's kind of crumbled. And it didn't, but it felt like that, right? And so to go through this process in my mid 30s to really wrestle with like, ooh, is this a hollow belief? Did I adopt this from someone else? And then to be able to use that work to then look at the knowledge that I'm bringing in and to say, ooh, is that a better articulation of what I was talking about before? Ooh, does that fit? It's such a great gauge, and there's such an openness to where, and one of my buddies, Chris, he mentions, he was like, oh, like you're just like you aren't the same person that you were 10 years ago. Your values might need to be updated. And doesn't mean that you're just like crumpling up, let's say,
Yeah.
authenticity and like throwing it out the window. You might need to elevate another value to meet you where you're at in your life to help be that compass or to help you navigate. And that's what I've loved about doing some of this deep work, being around people that are also doing the deep work, because I'd love to hear what they're picking up, and like the total accountability, the four agreements, like those types of things are great because it helps me look at it and then say, ooh, how can I articulate this for myself to where it feels like Trevin in my head and not just Matt. I love the guy. And
Sure.
he
Same. Like,
has been
whether
helping
it's
Matt. I don't think I've told him this, but like Matt's been on my shoulder too. And that
like
was
whether
great.
it's Matt or Hanse or like any of these other, again, high performer mentor type people,
Right.
Yeah, I love them. I love everything that they've given me and taught me. And yeah, it's running it through that filter of, does this make sense for me?
Yeah.
How would I say it? How would I run it through the lens of my experience, my perspective, my life, my voice, my tone, my everything? One of those things you talked there, the fifth agreement. I don't know if you're familiar with the fifth agreement or not.
Damn.
So, fifth agreement is stay skeptical,
Mm,
question everything. And the purpose of it is question your agreements constantly.
mm,
Because just like how the four agreement starts with the dream of the world and all these pre-installed things that our parents said, this is what's important, this is how you act, this is what you do, those agreements that we get from other people, as we go through that first like awakening moment that we have where we start to break some of those and we start to set our own, even those ones that we set at some point should be re-examined and either broken or reinforced.
yeah.
We should have that 5-year lease deal with ourselves of
Yeah.
every now and then we set time aside, get out into the woods, get away from day to day and go, what about myself needs to be reevaluated? What needs to be changed? What values need to go? What agreements need to go? What do I hold dear? What are my pillars? What needs to break and what needs to come back in?
Yeah.
It's renovate.
Yeah.
The bones are always good. Let's renovate the structure a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's change the walls. Let's change the color. Let's put new stuff on the walls. Let's change some of the how the rooms are laid out. Let's move a table over here. Like renovate the house every now and then.
Right. Man, the benefits of that are so wild to me. And it scares me to think how much of my life wasn't centered either around things that were my own or the intention of being able to use it as a filter. And if I wanted one thing for anybody that I care about, it would be for them to have their own like values and filter to be able to navigate the world.
Yeah.
And it's scary to me to think how few people have that on a conviction level to where they can like pull it out under duress, right? It's like it's kind of easy to talk about it here or like whatever, but like when push comes to shove, when the first punch is thrown, are you able to use that to either pick yourself back up, to make the next move, like whatever? And that's what I love about these physical pursuits is it's a stress test for it's a made up fucking stress test, you
Yeah,
know? Like
it is.
Moab was just like, and it fit all those things, right? Like, and so, following Matt or anybody else, like it's easy to fall in this rabbit hole. It was like, oh, I could have pursued any number of crazy endurance things. There's a million of them out there, but it was like, ooh, Moab hit like a ton of things. And so it was one of those first ones where it was like, oh, this is for me. And even getting into endurance sports wasn't for me. Like it was for a friend who was like, oh, this is a bucket list thing. And I was like, okay, like if you just need someone to train with, like, what are we talking about? Like you and I have been
Right.
in those positions and those are the most dangerous friends. It's like, I'll sign up if you sign up, or I'll do it if you do it.
That's why I rode from Kansas City to St. Louis.
Right.
That wasn't for me. That was because one of my friends goes, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to do it too?" And I am dumb enough to go, "Yeah, I could probably do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll figure it out along." It's one of those. I trust myself enough to know that whatever it is, I can figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. So I don't think I've told you about this, but so I know we talked about a couple of things because you're good at asking me like, okay, what's next? Like what's on the horizon and things like that. So my buddy sent me this like dirt bike adventure. Uh,
Okay.
so we booked it for August. I haven't been on a bike since like I was like 16.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, so I'm jumping through all the hoops, which laughing because Matt has a similar story where he's like, oh, like he rode bikes at a young age and then had to like go get his motorcycle license again. And so I am so excited to like not totally learn a new skill, but like I'm not the same person. I'm a little bit bigger, like all these sorts of things. And I love that I'm totally out of the comfort zone, and that there's this cool experience on the other end of it
Yeah.
where like, ooh, I'm pursuing. And so it feels like such a strong pivot from this physical pursuit with Moab, but I was like so thrilled to like go suck at something and then have this forcing mechanism to hopefully have some of that flow state experience and what that looks like to again take something and match it to an opportunity and to continue to flow. But it was weird when we're talking about like filtering that through. I was like, ooh, how it was funny to like land in this place where it was like, is this still a good thing, even though it's not a physical pursuit? Like so much of the last couple of years was using physical activity to stress test things. And so to have this one be not crazy physical was an interesting kind of like pivot, and it still aligns. And that didn't come immediately. Like it was a weird thing to navigate,
Yeah.
but I'm stoked.
Like, yeah, I like the reason that I asked that question that I do is, because one, I've been there. Like I've been on the other side of the big physical goal and felt that aimlessness.
Yeah.
And, I know that like, without having something to, like, we're both of a cut of fabric that we need something, right? Like, neither one of us are good with just sitting around and twiddling our thumbs.
Right.
Like, I go stir crazy pretty quickly. And so having something to pour that energy into, having something to focus some of the work, having something to go after and pursue, and in a sense, find out what I'm capable of in an area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need that.
Mm-hmm.
And, as much as I talked earlier about the goal of becoming being, kind of the paramount goal there, that having something to work towards makes life interesting.
Yeah.
And so I ask because I understand that, on the back end of something big, if you don't have something to work for, it's really easy to slip into some self-destructive habits and to let some of that old autopilot take over.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Fuck that guy.
Oh God, I think that was not great. It was not a good time for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got a question for you that I like to ask, and this could go so many ways for you. But with curiosity being a big part of who I am and this brand and all that sort of stuff, like, what are you curious about right now? Like, what is something where you're just like, ooh, like I'm excited to either figure this out or dive in or learn more? Like, where are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
like, ooh, this is where I'm matching curiosity?
So I've got a couple things that really have my attention right now. One, I am in the middle. Haven't really talked about this anywhere else. I'm in the middle of rebranding some things.
Okay.
And by rebranding, I mean actually setting out a brand.
Nice.
Kind of bring all the writing, the work I'm doing with NDY, like kind of bring it all under one umbrella
Okay.
for me and move it forward. There's going to be some more speaking things, some more podcasts, some more opportunities to put me out there.
Yep.
And so I'm really curious to see what comes from that pursuit.
Okay.
Also, professionally, things are changing.
Okay.
Regardless of what direction it goes, which there's a couple different directions that I could take at the moment.
Okay.
It's going to push me in a direction that's new, that's uncomfortable, that's going to force me to learn and grow. Really curious to see what comes out of that.
Okay.
So like basically the rest of this year, the rest of this calendar year is going to be a very interesting experiment.
Yeah.
And man, I am here for it. I am curious to see where this train leads. I just know it's not staying still, man. This train
Yeah.
is moving forward, and it's going to be a fun adventure.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't really have a big physical thing that I'm pursuing at the moment.
I mean, you just came off of one, so
I know. I just want to be jacked and tan and look good when I go to Greece in a month.
yeah, that I see you and I feel that like on a soul deep level. Yeah, I'm
It's
with
angles. It's angles and lighting.
you.
Pro
Well,
tip.
Greeks know
If
something
you
about that. Yeah.
if you set the phone at the right angle and lean in just the right way, it makes your traps and your lats look about 10 times bigger than they really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I figured that out real quick. Makes me look like 70% more jacked. It's great.
Yeah. I'm also trying to do these podcasts and where I have the flexibility to do that. I did one off of my laptop and I was like, oh man, no, just
Hmm.
wrong angle. Like it's coming up from the bottom and I'm just like, oh,
Hmm.
who's that guy?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
crazy. Yeah. Do you have anything that you've learned as you, because I consider you to be like a super curious person, like anyway, and I loved your example of like using writing as becoming. Is there anything that helps you navigate that ambiguity? Like I love that you just articulated some like substantial potential changes in your life and you're like, oh, I'm pumped. So like, is
Yeah.
there anything that helps you kind of step into that? Yeah, it's really ambiguity. Like, how do you, what fires you up, or what is there a tool or something or a mindset where you're like, ooh, this really allows me to have that energy and that excitement to navigate some of that?
So I am a couple things, right? One, I run a lot of things through this lens of writing. I look at things, I think in terms of narrative.
Okay.
I've learned this about myself. I don't necessarily think in terms of images, I think in narrative. And so that narrative plays out along two things that I'm passionate about, books and comic books.
Okay.
The story is never done, right? Like that's the big thing with both is the story's never done. Chapters finish, things move forward. And so I know one that I'm the one writing the story.
Okay.
And so navigating the ambiguity, I'm the one that writes the story moving forward. I also know that just like books and comic books and everything else, that with the next chapter, the next volume, the next issue, whatever it might be, it gets better.
Mm,
You know, the
yeah.
best parts of my life were not in volume one or two. They're in whatever volume comes next.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep going. We're going to keep growing. We're going to keep becoming something new and trust that it's leading me in the right direction.
Yeah. I love that. That's so cool. I also love there is something great about comic books, and we haven't totally nerded out about that, but I love you just have to nail the simplicity. Like it is an art, right?
Mhm.
Like the concise, the visual, like everything like matches up and it leaves so much to the reader and things like that, which is beautiful. But when you talk about like narrative too, it's like the writing is such a gift and so cool to hear you say that because that's not how I think at all. Like it maybe like a storyteller, like we've known each other long enough that I would rather talk. That's why I'm doing this podcast
Sure.
instead of writing, right? Like, but it's so cool to see how people really take hold of who they are and what resonates with them to be able to step in and
Yeah.
pursue those things. So thanks for sharing that.
Uh, yeah. The comic book thing, very obviously high
Yeah.
nerd. The comic book, it's a metaphor that I really like. And it goes back to the relationship thing we were talking about earlier with friendships that come and go over time. Comic books are the same way. The creative teams come and go. And so how I look at it is, again, I'm the main character. I am Superman in this metaphor.
Yeah.
The soul of the character remains. Over time, as different creative teams come in and out, as different seasons of life come in and out, different parts of that character are highlighted.
Yeah.
Different parts are added. The character grows, the character evolves, but the core of who Superman is has always remained the same.
Yeah.
And when he has a really bad writer, really bad creative team, it's not as entertaining.
Right.
Kind of regresses a little bit. Just like when we are surrounded by people who aren't right for us, we regress a little bit. But when we surround ourselves with people who have our best interest in mind, who love us, who care about us, who want to see us be the best versions of ourselves, just like when you have a creative team that comes in that cares about the characters, that wants to see them succeed, that wants to see them grow, cool things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great tangible example of what you were talking about before with the infinite game. Like, I don't know that I thought about comic books as an example of an infinite game, but you just nailed it. Like, and that's a cool, because I think that language is something that people struggle with when they're like infinite game, because we live in a world of finite games. Like we were talking about sports and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, like it ends. And what a powerful thing. Well, dude, this was so fun. I'm so glad that we're friends, and it's
Same.
so awesome to hear the cool shit that you're doing and what's pursuing and everything like that. And I'm happy to be part of the story and happy to have you part of mine. So,
Same, man. I
yeah,
appreciate you.
yeah. And I love the hell out of you. So,
Likewise.
cool, man. Well, on with Friday, whatever the hell that means.
I don't know.
Yeah.
On my other screen here, I've seen the inbox continue to grow.
Well,
Looking forward to this.
I'm the opposite. So it's a small town festival weekend. So
Perfect.
the whole town, I'm watching all this pink and green kind of go by. So it's Apple Blossom Festival.
Yeah.
And so kids are out of school, but with teenagers, they're still sleeping. That's why you were like, oh, like I've got this until 11. I was like, awesome. My kids are still asleep. So,
Now, I've got a whole lot of things to get done before I take flights 45 through 48 next week.
oh my gosh, man. Wild. Well, go get after it. Thanks for the time. Really appreciate you, man. And
No, of course. Anytime.
all right, brother. Love you.
I love you too. Later, man.
Bye.